Welcome back to the Run Home with Joel and Fletch. Thanks to the Tucson Hybrid by Hyundai, stylish and powerful. And many people are saying, I can't wait for True Crime Tuesday. Brian, it's an issue because you're not here.
No. So what I've decided to do is bring it forward. You know how we sometimes pay it forward?
Well, we've never done it without you.
No.
No.
Well, it's my segment.
Yeah.
Amongst other things.
Yeah.
So take it away.
Okay, let's do this. Well, Brian, thank you very much for bringing it forward. 24 hours. Now, this man here, he was a self-named Mushroom King of Sydney. Now he's a stand-up comedian and author. Andrew Hamilton, welcome to the Run Home with Joel and Fletcheroo.
Boys, good to be here for True Crime Monday.
Yes. Now,
True Crime Monday.
Hammer. Let's just go back in time.
Yeah.
Self-named, you're the Mushroom King. Are we talking,
Former, yeah.
button mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms? What sort of mushrooms are we talking?
The magic kind.
Yeah,
psilocybin. Yes. I specialise in gold top mushrooms.
Okay, yes. Amongst other things?
Among other things, yeah. I was known for the mushrooms, and that's
Yes.
what I was selling for the longest time. But over time, I kind of branched out into acid and MDMA and a little bit of ketamine and cocaine as well. But I was mostly known for the mushrooms.
Okay, so you're saying you're a drug dealer.
Yes.
You're a former drug dealer.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're not celebrating this as True Crime
No,
Tuesday on a Monday,
celebrating
Brian,
it.
in 2021. So this happened 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Hamilton, 36. If they use your middle name, you're in trouble. You know that much, don't you, Andrew? Yeah. 36 was convicted for selling a large commercial quantity of magic mushrooms and the supply of MDMA. They raided your Surrey Hills home.
Yeah.
You served 4 months in jail in Sydney's Long Bay prison and Park Lee while on remand. You were then granted bail and eventually sentenced to an intensive corrections order and 200 hours of community service. Now, when you had that raid at Surrey Hills, did you know it was all coming apart?
It wasn't a great day.
No.
Yeah, I'd been on a bender for about 2 or 3 days, and then I heard this loud crack noise in my front door, and I thought like it was just some fat guy that had fallen into the front door or something. And then I heard police search warrant. I was just like,
Did you know straight away it was you were done?
it just I knew I was done, but I just it didn't seem real. Like it was all happening so fast, and I was on a lot of cocaine, and so I just panicked and ran upstairs and started flushing as much gear as I could down the toilet, which doesn't work very well. And also, this is one of the first jokes I wrote was, you don't realise how long it takes for the big flush on your toilet to recharge.
Oh,
That's
right.
right.
Until the cops
Blame
are
Sydney
raiding it.
Water.
Yeah.
They brought in that stupid half flush. Damn you, Sydney Water.
Until suddenly there's someone trying to bang through your door with the Raptor squad, and then you're like, oh man, this takes forever.
So you just mentioned there you wrote a joke, so we'll get to that bit because I
Yeah.
know you're now a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Well, so you take us back to how did you get into this life of selling Persians?
It was very gradual. Persian rugs.
Yeah. Welcome to the Run Home with Joel and Fletch.
It was very gradual. I went to Thailand when I was like 20, and I had magic mushrooms at a place called Mushroom Mountain in Copenhagen, and I had such a good time. I came back and I told my mate how good mushrooms were, and he started researching how to grow them. He ordered like spores from Amsterdam, and we had like a whole bunch of different strains, and I was just eating them with my mates at uni and figuring out which ones were the best ones. And at that time, we were just eating like fat, wet, juicy mushrooms. Like it took a lot of work to even get it down. You had to have like half a hand of peanut butter with you just to swallow this awful tasting mushroom.
So, Andrew, I've never had a drug in my life, and I don't judge people for it, but are you literally having a mushroom?
Yes.
For those who don't know.
Yes, it's a real mushroom.
Right.
And it's a fat, juicy, wet one. And
Right.
so I was
that
like...
grows out of, does it grow out of cow manure?
It can. We found horse manure. It
Horse
grew
manure,
slightly
okay.
faster. So for anyone out there that's trying to grow magic mushrooms, there's a little tip for you.
Right.
But
Hammer, before this, so you're
Yeah.
20,
yeah.
never been involved with drugs before this.
I mean, I was selling some MDMA sometimes at parties to friends. But
Oh, okay. So you were when that's what I want to get to.
Yeah.
When did you get into the selling side of things? Was it just a means to an end, or you?
It was just, I knew people that I could get it off cheap, and I always would, I was at uni in Bathurst, and all my friends were always looking for stuff, and so it was just like, one, to help them out and be the life of the party, but also to make a quick buck.
Make a quick earn,
Yeah. So it seemed like it was helping on two benefits there. And so, yeah, with the mushrooms, it was just one, like no one else could get mushrooms, and my mate was growing them, and so I just was the guy that could get things. And so, yeah, that escalated over time, and I figured out that instead of eating fat, juicy mushrooms,
Yep.
it was better to dehydrate them, get all the moisture out, and then blend it up into a powder. and make them into capsules, because then I could like tell you exactly how much of a dosage you're having, which made it safer, but also it got past the awful taste. And so then we commercialised magic mushroom caps, and that grew over time into
What year are we talking?
Oh, man. So what was this? Been like 2010?
Okay,
Yeah.
2010. How much money were you making?
Oh, at the start, maybe 500 a week.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yep.
Just like an extra bit of pocket money, help me pay rent. And then over the course of many, many years, that grew and grew and grew. So I think by the time I got arrested, I was probably making like 30 grand a week.
Wow.
That was profit.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not paying any tax on that.
No. But what I mean is you don't have any overheads.
That's right. That's 30 grand profit. Yeah. So after me.
And was that just mushrooms, the 30K?
It was,
how did you graduate?
A lot of it would be the mushrooms, but then, it was a combination of selling it all, because people would come to me and I'd be a one-stop shop for everything.
Right.
Because that's why it kind of grew, because people would buy the mushrooms and they'd be like, have you got anything else?
Right.
Can I ask you this? As you grew bigger and maybe people became aware of you being bigger, was there a fear? Were people trying to run over the top of you, or were you...
I never had that. No, because my whole network was just friends and friends of friends. Everyone had to be vouched for.
Yep.
And so it seemed like it was just, it developed very slowly, but then once it got big, it got really big. But it just felt always safe. And if there was anyone who was a bit of a weirdo, their friend was accountable for it.
True Crime Monday, we have Andrew Hamilton. Why did you get caught? What happened? Well, do you know why?
Yeah, I know why. My ex-fiancée had...
Hell hath no fury?
Yeah, we'd had a bender. She'd had too much coke. She had like a psychosis on it and ran off with like a bunch of cash and a bunch of drugs and got picked up by the cops in Cronulla, I think. And
the same day that you got raided?
Yeah, no, this was a couple of months before. But she told them that I was a massive drug dealer, and that was a problem because I was, and then
okay.
But then I thought I dropped everything. I stopped selling for like.
So you knew she got pinched.
She told me. Yeah.
Okay.
And I forgave her, and I was like, look, you're wrong.
Were you still so ex-partners, or
we were still together at that stage?
Yes.
Yeah.
But just had a falling out at the time.
Well, she wasn't even a falling out. She'd gone.
Oh, okay.
She just had a psychosis on coke. Like,
right.
I wasn't even home when it happened. And then, I knew I'd been under investigation. But after about like 3 or 4 months of nothing happening, I was like, oh, fuck, maybe it's all good.
So do you reckon they were watching you in that 3 months?
I thought they probably were, and I had stopped doing everything. So I thought maybe it was time.
The coast was clear.
Yeah, and so I had a safe house where I kept most of the staff, and I would just keep very little at the house, and I would just go back and forth. But the problem was I'd get on too much drugs, and I'd be, but couldn't be asked going back and forth. So I would just bring too much over. And so the day that I got raided, I had way too much at my place, and the stash house never got found, right?
Allegedly.
That never got found, but the stuff in the house was too much, and so I got done for that.
So were you having a daily problem yourself?
Oh, yeah. I could handle all the other drugs being in the house, but coke was the one that stuffed me.
Right.
By the end, I was doing like an ounce a week, so like 28 grams of coke up my nose every week.
And what's that in monetary value?
Oh, that's like 7 grand of coke a week up my nose. And that's wholesale price. Retail, that'd be 12 grand worth of coke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
when you got pinched, did they come to you? Because in the movies, like we watch Narcos and all those sort of shows, they say, righto, we'll give you a lenient sentence if you tell us where you're getting it from.
So you think that, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote this in my book. I thought that was going to happen on day one, but no. They just asked me what drugs I was selling. I refused to comment on any of that kind of stuff. And the next thing you know, I was on a truck to prison. And it wasn't until I eventually got bail 4 months later that I had the narco cops come to see me to offer me a deal. And they were like, yeah, we can get something like 60% of your sentence taken off if you give us information. And they were like, and they try to sweeten the deal. Like, it doesn't even have to be someone you like, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
like, so you could
just give me someone.
You give me someone you don't like.
They need to kill.
Yeah. And so I said, look, fellas, that probably would be more effective before someone goes to prison and has a fine time. Because it really wasn't that bad for me. I got treated great.
Really?
Yeah.
But this is Long Bay.
Yeah, they say long bay, long stay. I was only there for 2 months, and I got treated great.
When you say treated great,
Yeah.
by the prisoners, by the wardens,
By the inmates.
By
Yeah,
right.
So like,
Yeah, but are you a smart enough guy? You got a big Cheshire cat smile. You're very likable looking, right?
Thank you, mate.
Is there part of that, Dale Carnegie?
Yeah.
Is there part of that as to why you got treated? Could you easily have not been treated great?
Oh, absolutely. I think the one, depending on what your charges are,
Yep.
you can be in a lot of trouble.
So
for that.
everyone knows.
Well, not everyone knows, but if they ask you, right,
Yeah.
you can either lie or be honest. But
Okay.
sometimes if you lie, you can be found out very quickly.
Yes.
Guys can find your charge sheet in the bin, or one of the screws
Yep.
might dob you in.
Yep.
But so guys thought it was hilarious that I was in there for mushrooms and acid, and then I think my size probably helps.
Yep.
But then I just, if you want to get into trouble, you can find ways to get into it. There's a lot of guys that rack up gambling dets or
Yep.
drug debts or that kind of stuff.
Inside?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's so much drugs flying around through prison, and there's guys just gambling, playing poker, using like their buy-up food as
Yeah.
currency. And so I was just like, if you stay out of all that trouble, then that's half the job. Actually, my first day in Long Bay, I walked into the yard, and a few times someone had said to me, "Oh, mate, I know you," and because I have one of those faces that looks like a few other people's faces,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah.
"That's a bad thing for jail, right?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
that's right.
Mistaken for someone else. That's right. So that happened a couple of times. I was like, "Nah, mate." And then this guy, first day in the yard at Long Bay, he goes, "Mate, I know you," and I was like, "No, mate, you don't." And he's like, "I do. You used to, whenever you won money on the Pokies at the Colombian Hotel in..."
Is he right so far?
Yeah. He's like,
no.
he was like, "You used to shout me and my missus beers," and I was like, "Oh." Nice. Oh my God, that is true. And this guy was like one of the most connected guys in the yard. And next thing you know, he was like, this guy's untouchable. And
You're sweet.
I got a sandwich press and a kettle next day in my cell, and he was giving me free eggs. And like, I had a great time after that.
So if you're thinking about going to jail, the bottom line is be nice to people
Yeah. And
before you go in.
And take Dale Carnegie with you.
My gambling addiction had never paid off in the outside world, but
No.
in Long Bay it did.
Can I ask you this? We're chatting with Andrew Hamilton, convicted drug dealer.
Yeah.
True Crime Tuesday on a Monday. Can I ask you this? So you mentioned about the $12,000 retail in cocaine that you were doing every week.
Yep.
How do you survive today? Why are you not dead right now, is what I'm saying. How did you get yourself away from that? And have you got yourself fully away? If you haven't, you haven't.
Yeah, I've had a few things that different happened. So I got off the drugs because for me, prison was like rehab.
Yep.
I think like 4 months in there with no alcohol or drugs and just exercising and getting some sunlight was enough to reset my brain. So now I can have beers again and I don't even think about drugs.
No.
Right? So that was one problem. I think also when I got bail, I went to live with my parents. I was originally under house arrest. And I think that also helped because you change your environment. If I had gone back to living in Surrey Hills, where I was drug dealing from and had the same circle of friends, I could have easily just gone back into it, right? So I think that the environment change was important. And then also, for me, going to prison was a huge wake-up call because, I was always of the mentality, I was happy to do the crime, do the time. But
So you were very accepting of that?
Totally. I was happy to wear that.
Yep.
But I hadn't realised the impact it has on your friends and family
Right.
and how selfish I'd
Who
been.
mostly?
My mum and dad,
Yeah.
for sure. And so that was a bit when I was like, oh, man, I've got to do something else.
Because they sent you to a private school?
Yep.
So they gave you every chance, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What
What does mum and dad do? What did they do?
My dad was a financial advisor and my mum was a TAFE teacher.
Yep.
Right. And I grew up with every privilege and I could have been anything. I chose to be nothing,
Where are you in the pecking order, siblings-wise?
I'm fourth of 5.
Yep.
And so, I squandered everything. And it wasn't until I sat in jail taking a massive L and I suddenly felt fired up. I was like, I've got to do something.
At what
with my
stage
life.
of the journey of prison did you think that?
I was probably about halfway through. So like when I got moved from Parklea to Long Bay, because the first few weeks I thought I was going to get bail very early. And I was already like, my head wasn't in prison. I was already like thinking about getting out. And
In
getting back.
hindsight, are you glad you didn't get bail?
Yeah,
Yes.
I am. Because the longer I sat in there and the longer I accepted that I could be in prison for years, my mindset changed. And so then I started to think about, okay, how can I change this? And so, I had this moment of clarity where I was like, if I could start over my life from scratch, what would I do differently? And weirdly, the only answer in my head was to do stand-up comedy.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
We're going to get to that.
Is that in the family? Before we get there, get to that. Why did you do it? Was it the money or was it the reliance on the drugs for yourself? Why were you continuing to do it, even after the missus sort of give you
I
up?
think when I first, like, my mate started growing mushrooms, and I was just at uni partying, and I would like to be the guy that was helping everyone out, and I was making a little bit of side money. But on the top of on the side of that, I also was such a massive Pokie addict, and I think that I justified it in my head because I was like, the thing that's driving me to want to like take my own life was my gambling addiction, and we have pokies on every street corner and every pub.
Sorry, you haven't mentioned the take your own life bit.
Yeah, so I think that was just when I was a massive gambling addict.
Yep.
I was in such a mess, and I was making so much money, but I was somehow losing twice as much. And I
Wow.
was always in the hole.
Like what? Just punting, just pokies?
Pokies, sports gambling, everything, you know.
And how much per week you thinking?
Well, I mean, it was somehow,
At your worst?
I mean, I've probably put over $1 million into the pokies.
Far out.
Yeah. It's hard for me to keep track of it, but it would be easily over $1 million.
Can I ask you this, Andrew? Your family, did they know that maybe Andrew is off the track or he's not? Like, what are you doing for work as far as they're concerned at the time?
I worked in public relations. I had a day job.
Right.
You know, so I was
that
able
continued
to-
on?
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
pretty good at turning up and doing all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Yep.
I was able to
Even off your
conceal
head?
all that. Well, that wasn't until the final few years, and that kind of fell off the wheels a little bit. But for the majority of it, I maintained a day job, and I was very good at it.
Wow.
At the same time. But yeah, I had this chronic gambling addiction, and I was just like, the laws in Australia don't make sense to me. That we have more poker machines per person than anywhere in the world. Other than, I was like, then if the laws don't make sense to me, why would I obey them? And so I was like,
But that's how you justified it.
yeah. And so I was like, the law, I can just make my own rules.
Are you? I mean, we'll get to the stand up you're doing, but now looking back on it, have you thought about maybe going out and talking to young people, or about who have issues with gambling and drugs?
I
It's
have
getting under control?
started to. It's something that I am interested in doing more and more over time. I think I went in and performed at a juvenile detention centre
Yeah,
recently,
that
and I
sort
do
of
get a lot of guys that message me about like my story resonating with them for
Yeah.
one reason or another. So I would be very interested in exploring that further, but it's not something I've done much with
Right.
so far.
Okay, now you're sitting in Long Bay.
Yeah.
You're at a buy up, and you have an epiphany. Genders, as we like to call
There's
it.
an Irishman, there's an Englishman, there's a New Zealander.
Were you funny? Were you sort of funny as a kid growing up? Like,
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I was like to be a class clown at school
Yeah.
and funny, but when I think back about, like, I used to love going to comedy shows.
Yeah,
I loved
right,
going to
okay.
stand up, and I would write jokes in my phone, but I never actively.
but were you off your head then?
I mean, I was drinking beers, but
Okay.
I guess, yeah, there probably were some really bad jokes.
Yeah.
But that's half the point, is that if I'd have tried doing stand up when I was 20, the jokes would have sucked. They would have been like every other guy at an open mic comedy night
Yeah.
when they're 20, right? They're talking about wanking, and that's it for
Yeah,
5
yeah.
minutes. And so I think it was only when I got older and I had a bit of life beating the shit out of me that suddenly I had things to talk about that were actually funny. But
So you're quite self-deprecating in your set.
totally,
Yeah, good.
yeah.
Brian, can you give him my favourite saying? Sometimes what?
Sometimes the best gifts come badly wrapped.
Is that resonate with you?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I don't know how. If I had have done comedy when I was younger, I would have done it and sucked and been discouraged.
Yeah.
But I think it just took me going on this very turbulent ride to find my path.
Andrew just intervened. So we're chatting with Andrew Hamilton, convicted drug dealer, now a comedian. And for those who are going, I like this guy, I like him, how could they, you got the book?
Yep.
How could they listen to you or see you or?
Sure. So the book is called The Profound Benefits of a Stint in Prison, and I recorded the audio book of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which was actually quite hard work.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. But so there's an audio book, and then I do stand up in Sydney and around Australia all the time. So you can, I'm doing a tour in North Queensland and Western New South Wales before the end of the year, but I'm on Andrew Hamilton Comedy on social media.
Excellent.
So good. I mean, it's good that you turned yourself around.
It's not good that tourists are saying that's up. We need a part B, Brian.
Yeah, I know.
Because we're
Tourists,
done.
why can't we continue with this? What have you got on?
No, at the
You
time.
can speak. You're not a mimer.
We've got Sports Day coming up. That's what he's saying.
Oh, okay.
Andrew Hamilton, thank you so much.
Yeah, mate, well
thank
done.
you so much. Very, very good.